going on, guys? Welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about something that I literally think about all the time, and it's going to be about the M5 and how I drive it all the time. Really what it comes down to is I bought this E39 M5 over 6 months ago. 16-year-old BMW M car. It's a manual and it has almost 30,000 miles on it. So normally a daily driver doesn't have those characteristics, which is why it's so interesting to me. So I'm gonna lay it all out right now. I'm gonna back the truck up and dump it all out for you guys. Really the biggest things why I like driving this car is one, the looks. I like the way it looks. The interior is very nice and I just love seeing another one on the road. Another thing that I really like is the power. So this thing has about 400 horsepower. If you have to do any maneuvers, if you have to overtake anyone, if you're going on long road trips, if I drive 15 miles for work, it's literally ideal on the highway. Of course, the stop and go traffic is not ideal just because it's a manual, and any manual car, it's not going to be fun to drive in stop and go traffic, but it's so good on the highway just like any other M5. But you know, I never really thought that I'd be racking up the miles like I have been in the E39 M5. So really the last big reason, which is gonna be probably surprising to a lot of guys watching this video, is gonna be regards to the fact that this car is really easy to live with. Besides the fact that it takes a little bit to warm up, and it has a couple little quirks about it, being a 16-year-old BMW M car, it's really easy to live with. It drives really well. I haven't had any issues with it. The transmission is nice. The power is great. So I have a couple complaints about like the driver's seat and stuff, but this car has a lot of amenities. It has the rear sunshade, which I freaking love. So this thing has pretty much what most general cars that are sold on the road today. The only thing it doesn't have is like a backup camera or backup sensors. This thing didn't have the park distance control installed in it or anything like that, but it has nice leather. It's extended leather. It has a little in-dash screen here. The AC blows cold. All the windows have worked, automatic windows. Even the headrests are electronic. So it has it has everything you need. I'm a little bit more on the minimalist side when I have my cars. Like my M3 doesn't have a backup camera, it just has sensors. I've never actually owned or bought a car that has anything more than just backup sensors. And I think that's just because of the cars, that I'm into. But, it's extremely easy to live with. The gas mileage, you are daily driving this thing, so you might want to think about that. My average is about 17 miles per gallon. And that's mixed city and highway driving. When I go on long road trips and I happen to be driving maybe 80 or 70 miles an hour, it'll get like 22 miles a gallon. Just put this thing at a $110 and set it on cruise and you'll get like 20 miles a gallon. It's like crazy. So it's really good on the highway. It's just so easy to live with. Everything works. I'm ready for the cup holders to break, and I'm ready to have a couple things go wrong, and a couple things have gone wrong. I have done some maintenance. I did a new clutch and flywheel in the car, so that's a pretty penny right there. But generally speaking, there's no rattles. It's extremely easy to live with. Going into a little more detail in regards to how I end up driving this thing all the time, it's pretty much created this differentiation between the M3 and this car, the M5. And what happens is the M3 ends up being much more of a quote quote weekend or special car because it's louder, it's a coupe, it's more fun to drive. This car is nice to drive, but it doesn't make you want to drive on a track or something like that. It definitely makes you want to pull like a freight train around people on the highway. That's addicting. It's literally addicting. Anytime I have someone drive it, they can't stop putting their foot down. But the thing is the M3 ends up being, like the fun car. And when I had the M3 in the Jeep, the M3 was like the only like performance fun car I had. But the M5 is so nice to just jump in. It's easy in every way. You don't even have to think about it. Like I mentioned, I have a few little gripes with that. No car is perfect, guys. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. You also have to keep in mind that with a car like this, even the M3 as well, there's always the threat that something big could go wrong, whether it's, you know, a throttle actuator or even replacing tires. You know, if you're used to driving around like an economy car, replacing tires on a performance car is not something you would ever be used to doing. So it's going to be kind of a probably like a slap in the face. Another thing that literally makes me want to drive this car even more is the cult following. So I can tell you 100%, anytime I see an E39 on the road when I'm in this car, especially if it's a 540, so if it's a 540 or like an M5, the 528s tend to be just like older dudes who happen to drive those cars. They don't really do anything, but what I'm trying to say is if you see a 540 or like a M5, I will guarantee or bet money on the fact that they will say something. They will say, hey man, you know, sweet, or you know, how long have you had it? Never sell it. You know, everyone is so excited. And I'll say the same thing back to them. Everyone is literally so excited about seeing this car and their car. You know, it's the sharing the passion. You know, they didn't make a lot of these M5. I think they made like 9,992 or something like that. They made less than 10,000 of them. So by now, you know, a bunch of them have been crashed or, you know, taken apart or whatever it happens to be. So there's even less remaining on the roads today, especially in North America. It's really cool when you see another one, you break your neck, especially if you're an owner. And I have even Marissa, or I have like close friends, will be like, oh, I saw this M5 or I saw this E39, and everyone just, it's such a likable car. And it's so funny. One of the things I think about is, you know, making my next move, whether it's, you know, buying a house or getting a different car or getting one car and replacing them, or, you know, doing stuff like that in my mind. You know, it's kind of fun to play it through. Something I think about is if I were to sell this car, which invariably will eventually happen, unfortunately, it's just kind of the way that life is. If I sell this thing, what is a better car from this era? So think about that. So early 2000s, so like 99 through 03, so this is an 03. What is a better car in that era? Go ahead. Name a better car that you can literally like daily drive that isn't, well, I would say insanely expensive. I guess these cars can be insanely expensive depending on which one you pick up. A little bit of that's luck, but what the heck are people honking at me? I'm not understanding. Florida retards as usual. What gets me thinking is for the early 2000s, I'm actually genuinely interested. I have a hard time thinking, you know, you can go the AMG route. I mean, try to keep it in the same ballpark, guys, but think about a vehicle that you could daily drive that's somewhat fun, performance oriented. It can or doesn't have to be a manual transmission, but like, think about that. And it could go maybe Porsche if you want, but a lot of those early 2000s Porsches, man, I don't know. The interiors definitely look dated. The cars look kind of dated. And I feel like this is a better car. You know, it's obviously, you're comparing apples and oranges at that point. But that's another thing that I think about is, you know, how this car is so good 16 years later. This car is literally, I mean, it's faster than any of these cars that I'm driving around right now. You know, I can pull on them on a red light. I can pull on them, you know, on the highway. It's more engaging to drive. Although the steering is not my favorite. You have to put it in sport mode to get a little extra, you know, feedback. Even so, it's still a little weak in my opinion. But it is an M5, and it wasn't really meant to be like, I would say, a hardcore track car. You know, some guys will probably argue with me on that, but if you're trying to buy a car that's for the track, I don't really buy this car. I use this as just the daily, you know, quote beater, you know, driving around and enjoying myself. But lastly, I'll say I was really not interested in like a four-door performance vehicle, like a sedan or, you know, 5 Series, or even like the E90 M3. They're great cars, but I like the E92. It's so cool having a car that does it all, pretty much. You know, during nasty rain or maybe inclement weather, it's not ideal, but this car really has surprised me. So I'm gonna wrap the video up here, guys. I know I probably droned on and on a little bit more than I wanted to, but I really like talking about this car and I like driving this car, so I figured it would be interesting to you what it's genuinely like living with. And yes, I know I have been pretty lucky with the maintenance stuff. You know, I've done a lot of routine things. I've done a clutch, and, you know, and I've replaced a bunch of things, but I know I've been lucky. So trust me, I'm aware of that. You don't have to tell me that, you know, something bad will eventually happen. So guys, let me know what you think. Is there a better car from this era, you know, the early 2000s? What would you rather drive, that, or would you rather drive an E39? You know, if you had to pick. And especially if you had to pick one to daily drive. So that's really the ultimate question here. Leave a comment below. And don't forget to like the video if you want me to get a new camera mount, because this thing is supposed to be good. It's that Gecko one. It's supposed to be super good, but it's like flailing all over the place. I don't know what's going on. Oh, guys, come on. Freaking people. All right, ladies and gentlemen, video is ending. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time.